Funding for this program is made possible by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Thank you.
In my case, it was emotional abuse mostly. It's time to let go. It's time to examine all of the past.
Mark, this is the ACEs questionnaire. Would you take a look at it and see if any of those or how many happened to you when you were a kid?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called the ACEs scale, a list of 10 traumatic events that happen to children, things like physical and emotional abuse and neglect.
Let's see.
7.
I'm going to say about 6.
I can say 5. 5 for sure.
7.
Yeah, 9 of them.
You had 9 of these?
9.
Doctors have long known that if untreated, early trauma will echo across a person's lifetime, causing addiction and mental illness.
Just emotional turmoil.
But now, the ACEs scale is helping doctors connect early trauma to actual physical illness and a shorter life.
Your body remembers the trauma that's happened to you.
And perhaps most troubling is the new understanding that trauma suffered by a child can then be passed down through genetics.
If we're not doing interventions, this is accumulating from generation to generation.
But history needn't be destiny. Most childhood trauma is preventable, and even the worst events can release their grip on the future through new therapies and education. But first, the trauma must be brought into the sunlight, and this single page of questions is helping.
He would beat me, my sister, my mom.
There was mental illness. My mother had major depression, wasn't diagnosed.
Many consider this to be the public health crisis of the 21st century.
It impacts both individuals and subsequent generations. Trauma has a profound, long shadow.
The first step is actually just taking the fabric and ripping it up, preparing the fabric. These pretty much to me represent bandages.
Rose Clancy creates art meant to bind up and heal the wounds of her childhood. Not physical wounds, but the emotional trauma of being raised in a neglectful, emotionally abusive home.
A dysfunctional family environment, rough childhood, mother with mental illness.
The art is called Dangerous Objects Made Safe. She finds discarded, heavy, rusty objects and wraps them in fabric.
The rusty object represents an injury that happened, whether it would be slight, like an insult, verbal insult, or something bigger. So that's what the rusty objects represent. They represent that weight. They represent that being stuck, like what do I do with this?
Searching for a way to move past the painful memories, Rose began bandaging her pain. Tying up the injuries, submerging them in water and vinegar, and turning them into sculptures, leaving them to live outside in the rain and wind and sunshine. Her studio and yard are decorated with these monuments to her lifelong effort to heal.
It was all the weight of my past, of all the sensate injuries that I was still carrying with me that I didn't know how to communicate with.
She remembers her childhood trauma when she reads the ACEs list.
Yeah, basically, the first one is, did the parent or adult swear, insult, put you down, humiliate you? That was a big part of it.
ACEs is the acronym for Adverse Childhood Experience Scale, a questionnaire that asks patients to count the traumatic events that happened during childhood.
ACEs is a great tool for people to realize what's happened in their past and how what's happened in their past can influence what they're doing in the present.
My mother always put me down. My father beat me.
I was molested.
My father was in prison.
Both my parents were drug addicts.
My mother attempted suicide.
I was really scared because I saw my dad hit my mom.
And everyone has a story, and those things are unique to that person.
ACEs has been around since the 1990s, when a study of more than 17,000 adults, mostly middle class and educated, found that most experienced at least one of the traumas. More than 10% had at least 4 of them. Trauma is widespread, and childhood especially is rife with it.
It's the secrets that are hidden in the closet that haven't been brought out and haven't been dealt with that can impact your family's life, your own life, for the extent of your life.
If you've lived through at least 4 of the traumas on the list, the results can be dire, doubling and tripling the chance for substance abuse, smoking, incarceration, and a failed marriage. But doctors now are finding the risk is not just to emotional health, but to physical health.
Having a higher number of adverse events leading to a higher risk for health problems was shocking.
Get 4 or more on the ACEs score, and the chance of heart disease, hepatitis, and breathing difficulties skyrockets.
The body remembers that stress. That can influence your body's health later.
It was adrenal exhaustion probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where you just tax your adrenal system way too much.
When Rose Clancy developed physical ailments, she connected the dots.
When you're dealt with, the flight or fight response is triggered over and over and over again daily, joint pain and stiffness, that kind of thing.
And that is when Rose knew she had to do something to release the hold that her childhood stress had on her. After binding up the traumas in her artwork and then letting nature have its way with it through changing seasons, it was time to unfurl.
I started to unwrap the objects and really got a sense of the transformation that happened. As these objects were leaching their iron oxide into the fabric, I was dissolving some of the weight I was carrying.
She had found a metaphor, art that allows her to turn the pain from so long ago into something beautiful. The dangerous, rusty objects had, with time, painted stories across the fabric.
It looked to me like a ship being tossed about at sea, and I was hanging on for dear life on that ship for way too long, and that I needed to let go. It was about that time that I kind of realized that what I was doing was I was turning the negative into the positive. I had to get to the point where I didn't want the baggage anymore. I needed to let go. The marks that are left are a result of the letting go. Just beautiful marks that felt so positive.
When I was growing up, I never felt safe at home because I never knew what was going to happen. I had fear of whether we were going to have a place to live because of my mom's addiction, and she didn't have the best choice in men. He choked me out on numerous occasions until I'd pass out.
Mark Marcus was a child who lived in fear of his mother's boyfriend.
I remember one instance where he was making some food and I didn't like how the food tasted and I wanted to spit it out, and he grabbed me by my throat and forced me to finish eating it.
When Mark reads the ACEs list, it's like reading a report on his childhood. He suffered 9 of the 10 traumas. His list paints a picture of a little boy living in homes without light or heat and no guidance or affection.
I felt that I was worthless. I was told I was fat. I was never going to amount to anything when I was growing up.
With no real family at home, he went looking for other places to belong.
So it started when I was 13. Okay, that's the first time that I tried drugs and alcohol. I found a group of people that did the same thing, and I felt like I could belong with them.
Before long, he was addicted. That led to jail, relapse, more suffering, and then finally, after 16 years, rehab.
And then I was surrounded by people, again, that loved me until I could love myself. And at just one point, it clicked. Like I stopped craving. I don't even think about it anymore.
He's been sober 4 years. He has a son now, a 6-year-old named Adrian. Mark worries that the trauma he experienced may spill down onto his boy, leaving him more at risk for addiction and other health problems.
My question is now that I've changed my lifestyle, does that lower that?
Unfortunately, the risk to his little boy is still significant. That's where the science of epigenetics comes into play.
We have early evidence that suggests that much disease actually can be related to trauma and to the influence of epigenetics.
Through epigenetics, the toxic stress of traumatic experiences changes the way DNA is expressed,
leading to a disease such as early onset dementia, perhaps, or diabetes, or heart disease, or cancer.
A 2013 study of laboratory mice tends to support this. Mice were exposed to a chemical that smells like cherries and almonds. As the mice smelled it, they were given a mild electrical jolt. 2 generations later, when the descendant mice smelled the same odor without the jolt, they were overly sensitive, recoiling and physically shuddering at the smell. Scientists believe the same mechanism is at play in people, this danger of passing down the memory of a trauma.
That traumatic event can travel through those signals all the way down to how those chromosomes are folded or unfolded, and then that can lead to certain manifestations in that child's lifetime. That child grows up to become a parent. They're actually passing down the memory of how to fold those chromosomes. Once these traumas have happened, they're not necessarily permanent.
Early intervention helps, but Mark Marcus never spoke of his trauma until recently.
We just buried it down deep and eventually ended up bubbling over. I believe it has something to do with toxic masculinity in society. Reason being is just because we're told to be strong, not to cry, to hold our emotions.
He knows he cannot change the past, but he can affect the future for his son by talking about everything and by being the parent he never had.
I decided that my son would have a better childhood than I did the day that I decided to pursue my recovery. The best moments are when we're just sitting at home relaxing and he's snuggled up on the couch with us, because it's just that feeling of love, true love that's there.
And now Mark is part of a team of peer navigators at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center who are working to change the future for others who struggle with addiction, many of them with their own stories of childhood trauma.
I get to meet people that are going through the same type of struggles that I had and be able to talk to them and show them that it's possible. It's very rewarding for me just to be able to help at least one person. We have to talk about the things that happen to us, because if we just hold on to it and never let it go, it permanently starts to damage us, not only emotionally but physically.
What do you think of her big poof here? You like it?
Nellie may not like having her head brushed like that, but she'd never let on. Nellie is a therapy dog at the Pittsburgh Center for Victims, a place that offers support to families and children who have suffered trauma.
It just made them feel, really good, to see the dogs, they come out and play with them.
Maya Wade and her 4 children have experienced trauma and toxic stress through family dysfunction that has spanned several generations. Maya herself checked off 6 items on the ACEs scale, but she never spoke of them.
You keep all that on the inside because you think about your future, you think about the feelings of others, and I feel like, as a kid, you're more interested in protecting others, even as a kid, and not so much yourself. So it was really hard to talk about. So I didn't.
Julie, stand up. Nice. And sit.
Good job. But recently, Maya knew she had to start talking. Her daughter had begun to react to the trauma with a change in personality. Her friendship with the therapy dogs has helped in her healing.
It's a very comforting program, and for her to come into the waiting room, to be greeted by the dogs, for her to relax, and to spend time with them. I feel like that helps before she has to, go in and do the tough work of, therapy.
When kids are in the presence of dogs, particularly traumatized kids, there are hormones in the brain that get lowered, particularly stress hormones such as cortisol. And so one of the kind of driving theories behind this program is that we put kids in contact with dogs, making first therapy appointments easier and less stressful for the children.
The Center for Victims also is helping clients with a new interactive exhibit. Soon, patients will be invited to walk through the Healing Rivers Project to learn about the ways in which early trauma can tarnish a person's life, as well as the ways in which therapy can help.
So that it's just like if somebody has a severely broken leg, we don't give up on them. We mend the leg. We have different techniques to mend that leg. We have different therapies and treatments to mend that leg. And we wouldn't throw the child out because there's a severely broken leg. We have to think of it that way. And oftentimes people can say, well, so much has happened to me, or you see a 10 or 12-year-old and you're saying, oh my goodness, so much has happened to him. How could he ever get on with a positive health lifestyle? Well, it is possible because it's not destiny.
One of the most important ways for a child to overcome the lasting effects of trauma is to have a warm connection with just one trusted adult. That's something Maya wishes she had had as a child.
Had I had an adult in my life that I trusted, that I felt truly comfortable speaking with, I would like to say that a lot of the decisions that I made as a young adult that have impacted me as an adult, left a lot of emotional scars along the way. I think I would have been able to deal with those situations better. Sometimes you end up repeating the cycle, not even really, recognizing that. And so I always kept that, in front of me. And so when I think about how that impacted me, growing up, now that I'm raising my own kids, I try my absolute best to give them, everything I felt that I was missing. I'm the person that they can trust. I'm the person that they can talk to.
I know that was hard to do, man, but you made a good choice.
It's the middle of the school day, and Khalib is tucked away inside a wooden igloo playing a game with his therapist. What looks like childhood play is actually important healing work, part of a program by the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center and the Penguins Foundation to bring school-based psychological therapy to students who have experienced trauma.
It's a really great way to have kids buy in to hanging out with adults and talking about things that are uncomfortable.
Khalib was referred for therapy when his behavior became disruptive.
Something's not right here.
Things weren't right. Khalib was being bullied.
He was being attacked in school, on the bus, stuff like that.
Khalib's mom was bullied when she was a child, and there were other traumas.
My parents fought a lot, physically.
She counted 7 of the ACEs traumas from her own childhood, a connection that shows how the effects of trauma can be conveyed from parent to child.
He's kind of emotional. He doesn't want to speak up, and it just brings back memories of me.
It was time to stop the cycle. Her son is getting therapy, and so is she. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy, a way in which the sharp edges of early trauma can be blunted.
We help children to face their trauma memories and the reminders that they have about their trauma experiences, to talk directly about them instead of ignoring or trying to avoid those memories and reminders, and then make new meaning about it.
The ACEs list is expanding beyond the original 10 to encompass the challenges of living in poverty and in harsh places.
So things like community violence, how safe you feel in your neighborhood, those are really important things to add to the study. For instance, I'll ask a child and or parent, has your child experienced any traumatic experience? And they'll say no. And as we continue to talk, for instance, I'll learn, oh yeah, there was a shooting right down the street. The child doesn't necessarily label that as trauma, right? Especially when the occurrence is happening so frequently.
He hears a gunshot, he says, Mom, I don't want him to come in my house.
The violence on the street was bringing worry into her home.
I hope they don't take you away from me.
Every social problem we face as a community is tightly bound to childhood trauma. Prisons, hospitals, drug treatment programs, all are full of adults who lived through hurtful, stressful childhoods. ACEs may provide new understanding and empathy.
So it's going to be a shift from saying, why did you do that, to what has happened to you.
All individuals can experience overwhelming trauma, but we do have some agency over how we respond.
And that means that communities, schools, and parents must become part of the solution. Parenting classes help to break the cycle of dysfunction.
They're always going to be going home to their parents. So the more we can educate the parents, the more we can help the children.
And with help comes resilience, a way to move forward toward better health despite the challenges of trauma.
I don't think the trauma that's happened to you, that memory of that, will ever go away, but learning to respond to it in a good way, learning to respond to it in a way that your body is not put at more stress.
Resilience can be built with competence.
From competence comes confidence in that they can do it.
Making a contribution by helping others, character, and gaining control.
Being able to say yes to what is right and no to what is wrong, but having the ability to say, you can respond in any way that you want.
We like the opportunity to intervene in the earliest days and times of a child's life. Doing so allows us to build resilience factors. Resilience factors ultimately can change the trajectory of a child, so this doesn't have to continue.
I want to be a different kind of parent for my children because I don't want them to go through what I did. So I constantly tell them, we're a team. We can work this out. Let's talk it out. Let's figure out the best solution. We're a team.
Unfurl it.
Although Rose Clancy's art is the deeply personal rendering of her own childhood trauma, she had always meant for it to be shared.
So that's what happened when I started working with these panels, is I reached that point of recognition that it's time to let go. It's time to examine all of the past and put it where it needs to be. And I need to do that by composing these panels and making an installation that I can walk through, but others can too.
Childhood is not always the soft and bright place it should be, and for too many children, it is hurtful and hard.
No one has a childhood that doesn't mark us, but it's something that creates the character that we become.
And the healing must start with naming the trauma.
I actually have a dream, sort of a vision, right? That 20, 30 years from now, when a patient comes into the clinic, they will have understanding of our epigenetics. They will have our personal history, our family history, our social history. It's never too late to get treatment. Anybody who's experienced trauma, get help, ask for help. You can always address this, you can always get better, you can always get help for yourself.
The trauma of our ancestors will shout to us across the years, but we can speak back to it with our own stories of strength and health.
Every person is the hero of their story, and just know that your story is unique and it's special and it's valid.
I really feel like I'm in a good place, that I'm free of the negative and the baggage, and I'm moving forward. Even though there was darkness, I knew there was light somewhere.